want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. I know we have no Pistons basketball until Thursday, so I thought today would be a perfect opportunity to talk about an article and react to this article that I was reading this morning. It does come from Amari Sankofa of the Detroit Free Press, and he came up with 3 trade targets that would land the Pistons the second option next to Cade Cunningham. So we're going to be reading these articles, reacting to these trades, and just giving our overall thoughts and opinions on the matter. So shout out to Amari for this article. I did really enjoy reading it. And shout out to the Pistons Pulse podcast. Bryce Simon and him over there do a phenomenal job with their Detroit Pistons podcast. But let's get into these trade proposals that Amari came up with. The first one is Michael Porter Jr., as you guys know, very popular name among not only Detroit Pistons fans, but just NBA trade deadline. So the trade proposal he came up with would send Michael Porter Jr. to the Pistons in exchange for Tobias Harris, Caris LeVert, a 2027 first round pick with top 10 protections, and 2 second round picks. So that's the trade he came up with MPJ. As we know, Tobias Harris is on the last year of an expiring deal. Got to throw Tobias in there anyways to make the money work. Caris LeVert, who's on a mid-level exception, his contract will expire not this season, but the following season. After that, he signed a 2-year, $29 million deal this past season with the Detroit Pistons in free agency. And the Pistons are allowed to attach first-round picks now, since the Isaiah Stewart trade did convert. So a 2027 first with top 10 protections and 2 second-round picks. The Pistons have a plethora of second-round picks that they have accumulated over the past couple of years. So that is the trade at its surface. Now, Mari does go on to write about Michael Porter Jr., and this is what he has to say. It says, Porter is among the names that have been and will continue to be mentioned most ahead of the deadline. The Nets are 11-25 and have incentive to sell high on the 27-year-old forward, who is in the midst of the best statistical season after being traded from the Denver Nuggets last offseason. I 100% agree. When you look at the Brooklyn Nets right now, they're in a rebuild. Like they don't want to be winning too many games the second half of the season. They want to have odds within the top 3, top 4 with AJ DeBanza, Boozer, Peterson. Like there's a lot of talent at the top that they probably would like to be lucky enough to win the lottery and get top 3, top 4 odds. So having a guy that is probably too good for the tank makes sense to try to sell off on him if they want to. Now, he also goes on to say that he's one of the league's top shooters and all-around versatile scorer with sustainable experience and has won a championship with the Denver Nuggets in 23. And he has been durable recently, missing just 1 game in 23-24 and 5 games in 24-25. It would be a 2-year commitment for the Pistons, barring an extension, as Porter will enter unrestricted free agency in 2027. He'll make $40.8 million going into next season. So the first trade is for Michael Porter Jr. The trade at its surface would send Michael Porter to Detroit in exchange for Tobias Harris, Caris LeVert, a 27 first-round pick with top 10 protections, and 2 second-round picks. Now, there are reports that came out yesterday that the Brooklyn Nets might want to keep Michael Porter Jr. just given the market. But as we do get closer to the NBA trade deadline, I've always been under this mindset and this opinion. Like the offers that you're offering right now in the second week of January probably aren't as serious offers as it gets to the week of February, as the deadline is on February 5th. So I think the offers right now might not be as high as Brooklyn may want them to be. I could see teams getting desperate or offering a little bit more if they really want to make a playoff push for a Michael Porter Jr. or looking for a secondary scorer, next to Cade Cunningham, an example for this podcast and this video today. So I've always kind of thought that his value to me is at least 2 first. Um, and it just depends if you're the Pistons. Do you really want to give up 2 first for Michael Porter Jr.? I think if that was the trade 100%, I would probably make it. Like Tobias, uh, Karis LeVert, a 27 first with top 10 protections in 2 seconds. Like, I feel like that is just, like, such a low offer for a guy that is shooting very good high volume from 3. We know that he can score at all 3 levels. And I know he's had the back issues, coming into the league, coming into the NBA, but he's been relatively healthy, this season and the past couple of seasons. So you don't really have to worry about the health. I think the only thing, if you're a Piston fan and you're looking at it, there are certain people that look at contracts and they look at the type of money that these players are making. A big reason why the Nuggets decided to trade Michael Porter Jr. It's not that he didn't fit in Denver. It was just the contract. The contract kind of restricted them from filling out their bench. And that's the main reason why they wanted to trade him to Brooklyn and a first round pick, is so they could, re-sign uh, Bruce Brown, who was a very big part of their championship team. They got Cam Johnson in that deal, who hasn't really panned out for them whatsoever. And they were also able to sign former Piston Tim Hardaway Jr. on a veteran's minimum. And then they also had Jonas Valanciunas. So they were able to fill out their bench. It had nothing to do with, the fit wise or the player with Michael Porter Jr. in Denver. It's just he made too much money for them to fill out their bench. And I think if you're the Pistons, you get a guy that can definitely be a secondary scorer next to Cade Cunningham. We know that he can put the ball on the floor. We know he can hit threes. And I think the one thing that is appealing about Michael Porter to me is, like, I think how it would differ from Jeremy Grant, because I know a lot of people kind of like use the Jeremy Grant parallel to Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. has actually played in a role where he wasn't the first option in Denver. He was like maybe the third option. Right now, he's the first option. I think can definitely come to Detroit and kind of play into that secondary option next to Cade Cunningham. Like, obviously, he's not going to get the same touches as he does in Brooklyn, but being that number 2 option next to Cade in the starting lineup, you can put him at power forward, I think would do a lot for the Detroit Pistons. But again, it really depends what Brooklyn wants to do. I've told you guys my piece with it. I still think it's at least 2 first-round picks. I could be wrong there. Amari does talk to NBA reporters and NBA front office executives. Maybe the asking price isn't as high as it possibly could be. I'm also under the opinion that they would probably want Ron Holland in the trade personally, just because they do have quite a bit of guards. I don't really know if they would want Karis LeVert back. I felt like they kind of went through the Karis LeVert experience years ago when they drafted him. I would kind of find it hard to believe that they would want him back. But hey, you never know. Crazier things could happen during the trade deadline. And as we get closer, I think some teams will make trades. Brooklyn could just be a team saying, like, hey, we don't like the offers. We're going to keep them. And maybe we'll trade him during the draft. Maybe we'll trade him this summer, or just wait until next NBA trade deadline. But I do like the name Michael Porter Jr. I think he's one name that I think a lot of teams want. Like the Warriors have been kind of linked to him. I know the Pistons haven't necessarily been linked, but there have been reports that they're looking to keep an eye on the situation to see, what the market could possibly be. I've given you guys my opinion. I think it's like 2 first and, one of our core guys, whether that's Ivy, whether that's Ron, or whoever it may be. This trade in this framework is more of our veterans and 3 draft picks. But let me know what you guys think of this first trade proposal by Amari for Michael Porter Jr. Like the name, like the fit, but we're going to have to wait and see as we do get closer to this February 5th deadline. Before we get into the next player in this trade article, I was over on FanDuel, you guys, and I'm looking at the Detroit Pistons. And currently we are the number 1 seed. We're 28-10. And I think a lot of talk always gets mentioned that, the Pistons aren't going to hold on to this number 1 seed. But over on FanDuel right now, playoff seeds, to be the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. The Detroit Pistons are the odds-on favorite right now at minus 145 to be that number one seed in the Eastern Conference. Excuse me. Followed by the New York Knicks at plus 210, Boston at plus 650, Philly at plus 3,000, Cleveland at plus 4,000. I think it should be a little bit higher if you do ask me. They just lost to the Utah Jazz last night. But hey, we've lost to the Jazz too. But the way they lost was kind of crazy. And the Orlando Magic plus 5,000. But yeah, Pistons are the odds-on favorite to be the number one seed and keep that number one seed in the Eastern Conference. Thought it was actually pretty cool to see that this morning before we did kind of get into this podcast. So going into the second player, it's a player that a lot of us have mentioned. It's another power forward, plays for the Utah Jazz. Ironically, we're just talking about the Jazz. It's Lauri Markkanen. So the Lauri Markkanen trade is a big one. It would send Lauri Markkanen and George Niang to the Pistons in exchange for Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey, and let's see, 1, 2, 3 unprotected first-round picks. So a 26 first, so this year's draft pick, a 28 first unprotected, and a 30 first unprotected. And then a protected 1 through 4, 2 second-round picks. So that's quite a bit of draft capital for Lauri Markkanen, but understand who you're dealing with, Danny Ainge. Now, Amari does kind of go into the Lauri Markkanen case and why he could be a possible fit for the Pistons. And he goes on to say, this is the proverbial big splash trade that pundits have hypothetically tied to the Pistons. 100% agree. Bleacher Report does a Lauri Markkanen trade. It seems like once a week. I see it on my time all the time. But he goes on to say that Markkanen 28 has emerged as one of the league's best power forwards in Utah, averaging 23.8 points while shooting 37.8 from three over 3.5 seasons there. The Jazz have maintained a high asking price for him, and it would likely take significant draft capital to entice them into a deal. Sending 3 first-round picks and Ivy would signal extreme confidence that Markkanen, 7'1" from Finland, would elevate the Pistons. It would be also a significant financial commitment. Markkanen is in the first season of a 4-year, $195.9 million contract that expires in 2029, with Cunningham in his first year of a $269 million maximum extension. The Pistons would have their top 2 scorers under contract for potential multiple years contending window. They would also have a tougher time retaining their younger players such as Jalen Duren, Sar Thompson, Ron Holland, who are all due extension negotiations within the next 3 years. Amari does make a lot of great points. Like, I've always felt like the Lauri conversation, I think when we look at this team, and we said it on last podcast this past weekend, like, I've always felt that the power forward position is our weakest position. Like, I love Tobias Harris. I love, bringing him back, having him be that locker room vet. It seems like Cade and Jalen Duren, like, just really look up to him. The whole young core looks up to him as that veteran, and he's brought that professionalism. And I don't really think we get to see everything he does in the locker room or off the court for that matter. But I think we can all agree trading for a Lauri Markkanen would be a huge upgrade at power forward. You are giving up 3 unprotected first, which is a lot for a player in Lauri Markkanen. Now, I understand, like, you have to pay a premium price for better players. You're not just going to get Lauri for like Bobby Klintman in a couple of seconds. I 100% understand that. I just think if the Pistons were able to swing a deal for Lauri Markkanen, I think this is the type of deal it would probably take. It's probably going to take multiple draft picks And I think it could be any combinations of Tobias Ivy, Tobias Ron, Tobias Asar, just to pry him away from Danny Ainge and understand like Danny Ainge is probably one of the most shrewd general managers in all of basketball. He always asked for a lot for any of his players, and he's been asking a lot for Lauri Markkanen since he's been in Utah. I think it is going to take a Godfather offer for him to get out of Utah. Now, are the Pistons a team that just says screw it? Um, we're not going to be conservative. We're not going to add on the margins, and we just want to go for it, considering where the Eastern Conference is. And this could be a very good opportunity to win an NBA championship in the East that is without Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton right now. I'm not entirely sure. I've always liked Lauri from afar. I think the contract is pretty difficult, and Amari does kind of point out, like, yeah, if you do trade for Lauri Markkanen, it does become increasingly difficult to extend guys like a Jalen Duren, who's been reported that wants close to upwards of $40 million on his next contract extension with the Pistons. Shout out to JD, by the way. Got on a cover of Slam magazine. Don't know if you guys saw it. It was a really cool magazine. And Pistons have actually been on quite a few Slam magazine covers as of late. But, the extension with Jalen Duren, we've heard upwards of 30, close to $40 million. That's something to kind of keep in mind and monitor. Jaden Ivey situation in Detroit, I don't really know if he's just going to be a six man. Does he eventually get back into the starting lineup? What does the organization feel about Jaden Ivey in the long-term future? Does Jaden Ivey want to be here? What does he want this summer for a contract extension? I don't think it's going to be anywhere near a max. I don't even think it's going to be in the 30 millions. I've told you guys that I think a ballpark for him is around like 15 to 20-ish million for Jaden Ivey. Like, is that enough to, keep him here? Is he happy with that? I'm not entirely sure. Don't know Jaden Ivey, never talked to him. But, I mean, that's a contract extension as well, alongside Jalen Duren that you have to think about. And then the very next offseason, Asar Thompson is extension eligible. Like, what are you going to offer Asar to keep him here in Detroit? I have no idea what Asar's market is. I'm not even going to try to even guess or estimate what I think it could possibly be. But I think we all understand what a great defender Asar Thompson is. One of the best defenders in the NBA, one of the best point of attack defenders in the league. And I think a big reason why the Pistons have a top defense is because of Asar Thompson. So understand, like, he's up for a contract extension pretty soon. It'll be interesting to see like what his market is, because I have no idea what it is, and I'm very curious to see what it could be. And then you also have Ron Holland a few years down the line, who could be extension eligible, which we all love Ron Holland, just the energy that he does bring off the bench. I think there is some possible two-way potential there that just hasn't been untapped yet. You kind of see flashes of it from time to time, whether he's putting the ball on the floor. I love that he's attempting threes, even though he's not a good three-point shooter. It's just, being able to get familiar with in-game three-point reps. I think, spending more time in the gym with Pistons assistant shooting coach Fred Vincent could do him wonders, him and Asar for that matter, kind of getting them more comfortable, shooting perimeter shots. So I think there's a whole lot of questions that I don't have answers to right now as it does pertain to Asar and Ron. So I think the Lauri trade, when we're looking at it at its surface, you talk about him in the starting lineup, it would be fun. It would be such a seamless fit. The pick and pops with Cade would be so much fun to watch. But again, it just really depends. Like, how fast do you want to, move this team into contention? A move like this would tell you, okay, Pistons feel like they have a window and they have to compete within this window, whether it's like a 3 to 6 year window of competing with Cade Cunningham and Lauri Markkanen. I don't really know if the Pistons are ready to commit for a big move like that yet. And I know some fans are extremely frustrated with that. They want that number two option. And I get it, you guys. Like, having another number two option could really help this team win even more games and get farther into the Eastern Conference playoffs and eventually compete for an NBA championship in the finals. But I've kind of said my piece with the Lauri Markkanen stuff. I think there's just so many questions that I don't have answers to. And that's probably why I would be out on a Lauri trade personally. I just think 3 first is quite a bit to give up for a guy that's making that much money. It's just a lot of money, and it's a really big contract. Now, the final player that Amari had in his article is Zach LaVine. So the trade he had with Sacramento would send Zach LaVine and Keon Ellis to the Pistons in exchange for Tobias Harris and Karis LeVert. Now, the explanation for LaVine and Keon Ellis is this. Oops, I actually don't have. Oh, yeah, I do. Never mind. Wrong one. Here we go. So it says similar to the Porter, LaVine has overcome the past durability issues. He has played a season and 77 games in 22-23. He played 25 in 23-24, and he's only on the books for one season after this one with a player option of $49 million this summer. That he almost certainly will pick up. It's a relatively short risk for the Pistons with a big upside if LaVine maintains his health. 100% agree there. We all know what a bucket Zach LaVine is, can score at all 3 levels, could play next to Cade Cunningham in the backcourt. It would be a really fun backcourt to watch. If we're just talking about offensively, like those two together, that would be crazy. They go on to say, sweetening the pot, taking on LaVine's salary, the Pistons would also get another rotational player, Ellis, 26, on his 4th NBA season. He's a capable defender and a career 41.4 three-point shooter on 3.3 attempts per game, but hasn't consistently been a large part of the Kings' rotation this season. For the Kings, the deal provides financial relief with their biggest contract shed. So this essentially would be a salary dump if you're the Sacramento Kings right now. Obviously, we can all agree, like, the way that the Kings season has gone, I don't really think they thought it was going to be this drastic. They signed a bunch of veterans. They have Zach LaVine. They have DeMar DeRozan. Domantas Sabonis obviously got injured, and that sucks for them. Russell Westbrook, Dennis Schroeder, like that's a very veteran-savvy team, but they're just not winning basketball games. And I think they're heading towards a rebuild personally. I think that they may be rebuilding for the next couple of seasons. And they may look to try to get off LaVine's contract. Now, LaVine has been in rumors with teams like the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm even seeing like Golden State is kind of just like a dark horse team for Zach LaVine. But like understand, like he has a very big contract, and this obviously would be a deal where it's a short-term solution for the Pistons to have that number 2 option, because LaVine isn't under contract for that much longer, but he does have a pretty big contract and a player option of $49 million. And Keon Ellis, I think, would definitely be a very good sweetener, as Omari does put it. He's a player that I think a lot of Pistons fans have kind of kept an eye on. He's a 3-and-D wing that doesn't get a whole lot of playing time in Sacramento, but I think that has to do more with Sacramento than it does Keon Ellis. I just think there are just so many veterans in front of him at that 2-guard position right now that he just doesn't get a whole lot of playing time. But being a career 41% three-point shooter, maybe a change of scenery where he does get routinely rotation minutes, he can develop even more with a team like the Detroit Pistons. I mean, having a guy like him off the bench would definitely be interesting, but also it's just like, how many guards do you really want on this team? Like, because you still have like Marcus Sasser, you have Danish Jenkins, Jaden Ivey would hypothetically still be on your team. So it would be like very challenging, I think, for JB Bickerstaff to know what buttons to press and what players to play. But I think he's done actually a pretty good job of kind of riding the hot hand and finding players to step up in big moments. Like we've seen Sasser games against the Lakers. We've seen Dana's games against the Cavs most recently, where he scored 20 in a quarter. So, I mean, if any coach could handle that many guards, it's probably JB. But I mean, that is quite a bit of guards. But I am very intrigued with LaVine. I think it just really depends. Like, if the Pistons aren't really sold on anyone at the deadline and that they're just looking for a secondary scorer to look for in the short term, I think LaVine does make a whole lot of sense. He checks a whole lot of boxes. We've seen firsthand this guy light the Pistons up for 50. And still lose. Like we know how talented he is as a 3-level scorer. And I just kind of think like when you talk about the backcourt, like a LaVine and Cade backcourt, I think could work. I think they could definitely play off each other. I think LaVine could bring the ball up the court and play point guard. Cade could play shooting guard off ball, and vice versa. I think Cade could bring the ball up court. LaVine could playoff ball, come off screens, curl, backdoor cuts. Like I think he would just be such a seamless fit. It just really depends like what the Pistons want to do in terms of trying to find that secondary option. And it might not be this deadline. It might be this summer personally. It might be this summer where they make a trade on draft night. It could be this summer where they decide they want to make a trade in a different type of move to get a secondary option, or it could be next trading deadline. Because I think the Pistons do have a lot of financial commitments, like Omari did mention, as did pertain to the Lauri Markkanen trade for that matter, because like they have so many extensions that they do have to worry about in the long term future. But I think any of these secondary options would fit. I think they would all fit if we're just talking about like on paper. Like I think Michael Porter Jr. In the starting lineup as a power forward makes a whole lot of sense for the Detroit Pistons. Same with Lauri Markkanen on paper in the starting lineup. If we're just not even talking about draft picks or contracts, like he makes a whole lot of sense. I think he makes a lot of sense at power forward for the Pistons. And Zach LaVine at shooting guard next to Cade Cunningham in the backcourt makes a whole lot of sense. But all these guys are on big, $40 million deals, and it is going to cost something to get him. I do think though the Sacramento one is interesting because I could see them just salary dumping because they're just in a really tough situation. Like I could see them selling off on a lot of their vets, not just LaVine. Like I could see them, possibly entertaining offers for Sabonis. I could see them, taking offers for Dennis Schroeder, especially after that 1-2 piece he gave Luka Doncic. Apparently, no videos have surfaced, which I'm still really surprised by that. I'm surprised TMZ doesn't have footage of that. But Sacramento's interesting because I think where they're at, I don't really think they want to be paying all these vets all this money. I think Scott Perry has made it pretty clear that he wants to have a tough-nosed defensive team, kind of like what the Pistons have right now. And he does have Detroit Pistons roots because he did work in the Detroit Pistons front office under Joe Dumars years ago. So Sacramento could be a team to kind of look out for. Another player that wasn't really mentioned in this article, like Malik Monk, as of late has been getting more playing time. Wonder why he's doing that. Why is Malik Monk all of a sudden getting playing time as we get closer to the NBA trade deadline? Malik Monk was a player that was apparently, on the Pistons' radar this past summer. Maybe Malik Monk could be a cheaper option if you're the Pistons looking for that number 2 option. I think there's a lot of players that are just so under the radar, like Kobe White, I think would make sense. Kind of fits into that trade exception, but it would be a 1-year rental. So you have to kind of take that into consideration. But I do think there are more buy low options if you don't want to spend as much money or much draft capital on any of these players as it does pertain to Michael Porter Jr., Lauri Markkanen, or Zach LaVine. But this was really fun to talk to you guys for about 30 minutes. I missed you guys, even though I just talked on Sunday and the Pistons don't play until Thursday. I just thought doing a little 30-minute podcast today could be fun. And shout out to Omari for a really great article, as always. Like, if you guys aren't subscribed to the Detroit Free Press, definitely should be. Now, listen to the Pistons Pulse podcast, definitely should be. I'm going to have Bryce and Amari on the podcast one of these days. I know I've tried in the past, but both of them are extremely busy. But appreciate you guys watching this and listening to this for today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe. Take care. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.